My name is Faith Onubajay. Fun fact about myself, I would say I love all things interior. So I can be watching a movie, whatever it is, I'm always looking at the surrounding interior, everything. I just love all things interior. What it is really, it's a safe space for people to share their experience. A lot of people bottle things in that they've been holding in for such a long time. So I think it's important to have that culture of openness and vulnerability and being able to share our experience. So I think that's what it is about sharing, being open and knowing you're not alone. So I was a social care assistant in social services, in adult social care. So I basically did assessments, reviews for anyone over the age of 18. So it required me to go out into people's homes, do assessments, reviews, organise their care for them, do safeguarding stuff. So entailed, office work and going out as well. So there was two stages to the whole situation. The first stage, it was the usual thing of being allocated a case. Typically, I would arrive at a client's house and I introduce myself, then I proceed to complete the assessment. It usually runs pretty smoothly, but on this occasion, as I arrived, he was really reluctant to let me in. He was very hesitant when he saw me, and on reflection, obviously it's because of my race. He was pretending we didn't have an appointment, even though I had booked it the day before. And he was like, "Oh, I didn't book an appointment with you," but I just, reminded him, persuaded him to basically let me in. I still at that stage didn't know what was going on until I got in there, and he was very. He didn't sound like the man I'd spoken to the day before, basically. But it didn't take him long to share his views, basically. And he said things like me being there is testing him. And he's told the council on numerous occasions that he doesn't like black people. He doesn't want black people looking after his wife. He said they're very rough. Black people don't comb their hair. They don't know how to care for his wife. And I can only imagine what the carers had been going through as well. Him saying those things, and he insinuated that the carers have been stealing stuff just because they're black. So he said a lot of things basically to me. Yeah, I'm finding it hard to actually remember all the things he said, but I was there for half an hour and he said a lot. And I think on reflection as well, I'm quite angry with myself for staying there for so long and enduring that for half an hour. But I think a part of me wanted to hear out what he had to say and why he was so against black people, and I don't know, maybe talk some sense into him. I felt like it was between me and him, and I just had to I've never been in that situation before, basically, and I just wanted to understand where he was coming from, and it was a huge shock to me. And when I'm in a state of shock, I tend to just sit there in shock, basically. I won't say he was aggressive. I think he's one of those men that's had their views for all their lives, basically, and he said things like, "My mother told me about you people," and my mother's dying wish was that she wouldn't want any black person looking after her. And so I could tell he's had that view his whole life. And he was so confident in the way he spoke. He's also said things like, "I don't care, go to the press, go to the police, I'm entitled to my opinion. They will know that I'm an old man," and blah, blah, blah. So he was very confident in the way he spoke and very assured that there was going to be no consequences for him, basically. So, yeah, he wasn't aggressive at all. I think for me as a person, it takes a while for things to sink in. So in that moment, I think I was quite numb in listening to all he was saying. And I tend to do this nervous laugh. And I think that's what I was doing when I was there. And I've spent many, many days, hours reflecting on, how I was and what I could have said better and, what I could have done better. But yeah, and to this day, I don't know what I could have done better and what I could have said better. But yeah, spent a lot of days reflecting. So we actually couldn't do the assessment. I didn't even get through my questions that I would normally ask to try and, you know, resolve the. So the actual situation was that he didn't want black people caring for his wife, and I was sent there to resolve that situation, and to me was quite baffling. And that will take me on to the next part of this whole situation. But I think at that moment I'd had enough of what he was saying, and I decided to remove myself from that situation, and I left because I couldn't take it anymore. So after I left the man's house, I was in a state of shock. The first person I spoke to was my husband, who was like, "You need to tell your manager." So I spoke to my manager, and we had a little meeting, and she was absolutely shocked at the situation, and she was really upset, and she encouraged me to report it to the police. So I had a day to think about it because I didn't know what was going to come of it. So reported it to the police. They got back to me a few days later and basically told me that the man committed no offence and he was entitled to his own opinion, basically, because he was in his own home and you can say what you like in your own home, basically, which I found quite shocking, because how can you provide a service to someone in their home? You can be an electrician, you can be whatever. If you just provide a service to someone in their home, they're allowed to verbally abuse you and there's no consequences for them. And on reflection, I think he knew that, and that's why he was taunting me with the "I don't care, go to the police and say what you want, there's going to be no consequences for me." So I think he knew that, and he was playing on that, basically. And another thing he said was, "I've told the council on numerous occasions that I don't want any black people in my house." And I was thinking, what did he mean by that? Did someone else know about this man's views? So that got me to look on our system, because we record everything when we have a conversation with someone, or we just put case notes down. So I saw that the manager who had allocated me the case, she had basically recorded in the system that this man does not, he's got racist views, and she had done that herself. But she allocated me the case, basically, and which I didn't understand, because his views were he didn't want any black carers. So you want us to, she sent me there to resolve that situation. And for me, I didn't understand that. So she was an assistant manager. So I went to the senior manager to explain, this is what I found out, and I don't quite understand why she would allocate me the case. And my manager was like, "Oh, she can't believe it, that she would, she was shocked by it." So we decided to have a meeting with this manager, and during the meeting, it just went completely left. She cried the whole meeting. She was basically like, "Oh, I can't believe that you think I'll do that on purpose." And she never once apologized for the situation she had put me in. So she just, I call it playing victim. And she left the meeting, and bearing in mind the whole office kind of knew what was going on, and saw her leave the meeting crying. And she called in sick the next day, saying she was too upset to come in. And for me, I was thinking the whole point of the meeting was lost. She never took accountability for what she had done in that situation. And after the meeting as well, I heard she had called me, stone-faced. And she thought I had no emotions, and she just felt like I was attacking her, which I wasn't. I just stated, during the meeting, I stated the facts of the situation. This is what it says on our case notes, because I didn't want to bring emotion into it, because I know, as many people will say, the angry black woman narrative. So I kind of stayed composed during the meeting and just brought the facts to her. Like, you had basically put on the case notes that this man doesn't like black people, but yet again, you still thought it was okay to put me in that situation. And for that, she called me, stone-faced. And till this day, I just don't understand why she put me in that situation. After the meeting, we didn't have a conversation. She never sincerely apologized. And for me, the organisation didn't take it seriously as well. They tried to tackle the issue with, the man. They sent him a letter, which to me was very, I don't know what word to give it, but the letter basically stated we don't tolerate discrimination against race, gender, the whole thing. But for when it came to her, there was no consequences for her. And I think for me, I found it quite difficult as well, because they did ask me, like, what do you want to come out of this? And as a Christian, I didn't want my motives to be something spiteful. Like, I didn't want her to get sacked, but I just wanted her to take accountability. But there was no consequences for her. And I kid you not, a month later, she got a promotion. And there was no consequences at all for her. She moved on in her career, and I felt like I was no longer safe in that career. I couldn't comfortably go into someone's home and provide them a service, knowing that I'm not protected by the police or the organisation. So I've started a new career, and it's kind of like, it's good because I've moved out of that, but I have to start again while she's progressing in her career, and I'm, starting my life all over again. So it's been quite difficult knowing that. Now I think I thought I was at peace with it, but with the current situation of what's been going on, because at that time when it happened, I did feel like, I need to do something. I need to get the laws changed and get people who provide a service to someone at home, get them protected. And like I said, get the laws changed to protect them. But I kind of felt like I was angry every day at the situation, about how it all played out. And, but I had to step away from it, because every time I went into the office, it was, reliving the whole situation. And I never even mentioned my colleagues as well, who, some of them were supportive, but some of them would say silly things like, don't take it personal, don't take it too personally. And I was thinking, okay, that's very funny. But now I think I have a responsibility to do something about it. And that's why this platform is so important, to share experiences like this. And, I can only, like I said before, I can only imagine people like carers who provide personal service, like the kind of racism they endure and the things that are being said to them. I can only imagine, and I haven't really heard people say much about it, or, So I think this platform is so important, and I feel like this sense of responsibility to do something. So I think, that's what it is now. So for the first part of the situation, what I would advise someone to do is, if someone is verbally abusing you, you should just remove yourself from that situation immediately. Don't feel like you have to stay there or prove something, because you don't. To protect your own mental health, your own sanity, just remove yourself from that situation. And in terms of the situation at work with my manager, what I would advise someone to do is definitely speak to people and, what can be done. For me, I think I used my religion to try and downplay, because I didn't want to come across, too harsh, or, but what she did was wrong, and you need to understand that you shouldn't tolerate that kind of disrespect. So definitely speak to people, get advice on what you can do, speak to your HR, because I never spoke to HR, which is quite shocking, because they should have spoken to me after the whole situation. But, step up and actually, fight for yourself and do something about it.
Hi, my name is Temi and I work in HR. I'm the HR director for Westminster Abbey, which includes some of Parliament and some of the Royal Household. And I've been in HR now for 12, 13 years, I think. And I love HR, it's the only thing I know how to do. And I just want to thank Faith for sharing her experience with us. Really, really brave. I don't think enough people share their experiences, so when they do, it's a big congratulations to them. And I think what really got me about her experience is because it just nerved me, which of course anything to do with racism does, but more so because I think something could have been done about it. So she experienced harassment in the workplace through one of her clients, I think it was. And I think the most frustrating thing is employers can do something, so organisations can do something. What struck me was that in 2010, the law was changed and they brought in something called third-party harassment. Now, before there was harassment just with employer and the employee, so maybe colleagues in the workplace, your managers harassing you or anything like that. But in 2010, they extended that law, so it was now third-party harassment, which means that any sort of client or customer, the employer was also had to ensure that they don't harass their staff. I hope that makes sense. So you would have noticed that from about 2010, for example, TfL, they were putting up notices saying, you know, please do not harass our staff. We will not accept harassment or violence of our staff. So it was on buses and trains and tubes and things like that. And that was because now the employer was directly responsible for any time a third-party user, so a stakeholder, like I said, a customer, a client, or anything like that, if they did anything to the employees of that organisation. So when something did happen for me, I was just like, why didn't they say something? You know, why did it take them so long? Why didn't they really talk about it and make sure that they protect their staff? And I think that's, for me, is one of the flaws, is employers forget to protect their staff, either physically protecting them, like, you know, we're seeing at the moment, giving them the right PPE, whether it's psychologically protecting them and making sure that that they're protected so they don't feel that they have to go into the workplace and feel a way about anything or just accept complete rubbish and racist attitudes, behaviours, harassment and abuse. So I think my advice would be, don't be afraid to talk to your employers about it. You hear these things and you ask them, oh, what did you do? And they say, oh, I didn't do anything about it. You know, I didn't bother. And I think my advice is just talk about it. Make sure it's written down, because it's not just about helping you, but it's helping other people in the workplace that may come after you and after you've left. So bring it up with them and do your research yourself. So many people don't know about this third-party harassment, but it's there, and it's something that employees can use to hold their managers to account, to hold their employers to account, to say, hold on, I don't have to accept this. And so I would encourage people to do the research, especially on the Equalities Act. It's called Equalities Act 2010, because it talks about all types of discrimination, everything from third-party harassment, like I've said, all the protected characteristics, I can never say that word, from being pregnant and being on maternity leave, to your age, to your race, to your belief, even your belief in politics. You know, people can't just throw around accusations about, or, you know, or their own beliefs and squash yours, you know. So I would ensure that you do your research. And I think the second advice I would give is, don't take whatever they say lying down. So I think Faith raised it and nothing was done about her manager. And again, I would say, you know, appeal that if you can, if that's the process. So appeal it so you don't accept the decision or the outcome, and really go into it again. Not enough people, especially people from a BAME background, take cases right through to tribunal. So tribunal is the court basically for when employees want to take their employers to court. It's kind of the format for that. It's called a tribunal. And I think it's something that less than 30% of court cases are from those from a BAME background, even though we're the ones who experience it more. And you can see that that doesn't make sense. And so when usually I get a phone call, oh, Temi, can you help? Can you help? And the first thing I ask is, are you ready to fight? You know, because it is a fight, but one that those judges and those courts, once they have the evidence for, they will sit up and you will have a favoured outcome. So yeah, that's the second advice. I think my third advice, especially when I saw Faith, is to ask what's going to be done. We sort of we'll say what our issues are, and we'll say, you know, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with that, but we won't say what we expect to be the outcome. So for Faith, it should have been that her manager should have been held to account. And we don't ask, you know, okay, it's been 6 weeks now, what happened to my manager? You know, my manager hasn't been spoken to. And ask what their policies are on protecting their staff, you know. Faith had that right, and I think that right was taken from her. And I think something more general is when we're going to look for jobs, I think some of us find ourselves in a position of when we're like, you know what, I've been unemployed for a really long time. So I'm just so happy to get a job. And so they call you up for the interview and you're prepping the questions you're going to ask. But we don't do enough preparation for the questions we need to ask them, holding them to account. How are you going to look after me? How are you going to ensure that I'm taken care of, that you protect me? What are your policies on racism? What are your policies on discrimination and ensuring that harassment doesn't happen in the workplace? Doing your research, you can Google whether an organisation's been taken to a tribunal court before. You know, you can Google how many, what the outcome was. You know, all this information is available to us. So I would just encourage people to, like I said, do the research. Yeah.